What's up, guys? Welcome to Movie Emporium's Flashback Reviews, where I take movies from the past, break them down, tell you what I think about them. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button. Join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below on any video that you watch my channel. So we head into 1973, which is literally 2 years after Sean Connery retired from the role in Diamonds Are Forever, and we're going to be talking about Live and Let Die. Finally brings in Roger Moore into the foray as James Bond. He ends up becoming the longest running James Bond with 7 films. And this is an interesting movie because even before Roger Moore got hired, he was actually considered for the original Dr. No film. Because of things happening with obligations and so on and so forth, he just couldn't do it. And they actually looked, for this movie, they looked at people like Burt Reynolds to become an American James Bond. But people, like you and me, thought that was kind of weird, and so did Burt Reynolds. He's like, you guys need to keep this as a British person. So the Saltzman and Broccoli family decided to do it, and that's when they officially hired Roger Moore to take over the role. And this is not the best introduction for the Bond character in the Roger Moore era. This movie's kind of boring. It's kind of racist and a little stereotypical. But it brings back Guy Hamilton as the director. This is his third of 4 films in the franchise. And instead of Richard Maibaum writing this, he actually bowed out because he was busy. He actually didn't like the direction this film was going to be more an American film. They brought in writer Tom Mankiewicz, who is an American. And this once again proves that he is, once again, not the right fit for this franchise because, like I said, this movie is just not that good. But with that said, this movie has the best Bond song of all time with Live and Let Die from Wings, which is Paul McCartney and his wife, Linda McCartney. And this song is magnetic. It's fantastic. It really sets the mood for what this movie should be. But the problem is, with most great music and Bond, they're usually attached to films that aren't great. It's just the way it is. I think World's Not Enough is really good. I think, for an extent, Die Another Day with Madonna is really good. But sometimes they're just not attached to great films. It's just how it works out. And this kind of proves that. Live and Let Die is a fantastic song just by itself. But this sees basically Bond going to New Orleans to investigate why 3 of his MI6 agents have been killed. One was killed in NATO. One is killed in the very beginning of this film in New Orleans, which is actually kind of a cool way to start this movie. Because basically there's this procession coming through, which is when weddings and funerals happen. And you have this big jazz band, and they're doing if there's a somber tone when there's a funeral, or there's a big jazzy tone when there's a wedding, and so on and so forth. And one of the MI6 agents is there to investigate this character named Kanaga, or Mr. Big, who is played by Yafet Kodo. And he's watching the procession come by. He doesn't know he's about to be killed by this unnamed person that's right next to him. And he gets stabbed, drops to the ground, and they take the casket and drop it on him. Pick it up, he's pulled away, so nothing happened, and the jazz music plays up. It's really fantastic for an opening, but doesn't really set the tone or mood of this film, because this film ends up being a blaxploitation film. It's blaxploitation through and through, because the main bad guys are black, one of the main Bond girls is black, and just this way they feel, the way they look, the way they dress, the fact they're saying, honky when they see white people, or they're saying, yeah, daddy, and stuff like that. It's very of its time. It's very of the 70s. It's very like Dolomite and, Foxy Brown and stuff like that. It doesn't make it wrong that they put it in here, but it really kind of pulls back the nature of James Bond and who he is, which is a guy who stops world villains and super villains taking over the world or destroying the world. This is about James Bond going to New Orleans to basically stop a heroin dealer, and that's just a little off-putting, be fairly honest. But maybe at the time when this came out in the 70s, it was a little more fun to watch, I guess, because it was the 70s and this is what they put out. And he travels, of course, to America, and he meets his friend Felix Leiter, who's once again played by a completely different actor. And there's actually this kind of cool sequence where Bond is being taken to Leiter, and one of Kanaga's henchmen basically is used to hit one of their cars. And there's this really cool mechanism where he basically, the henchman lines up where he attacks, where a line up of a scope, and he presses the button in the car and it actually darts the driver, which I think kills him or something like that. And so Bond's having to drive around. He's back and forth, and he's trying to make sure he doesn't crash. And he basically learns from Leiter of Kanaga and stuff like that, who's Mr. Big. And it's basically a movie about him, James Bond, going after Kanaga, and he meets a character who is played by Gloria Henry, who plays Rosie, who says she's a CIA agent, and she takes him to Jamaica, where this is where Mr. Big is, hiding out and stuff like that. But we learn, of course, Rosie is not an agent, and she's killed by Mr. Big because she's going to talk, and so on and so forth. And then we have on the other side of this movie, we have Kanaga has this character named Solitaire as his seer or tarot card reader, because once again this is about voodooism. The character of Solitaire is played by the very attractive, very awesome, just very cool Jane Seymour, who is very young in this film, and she is just kind of cool. She's like one of the better Bond girls in the entire franchise because it's just Jane Seymour. It's just she's an awesome actress, and she's able to find out and tell where James Bond's gonna be. And this is what cracks me up about James Bond movies in general. The minute James Bond finds himself with Solitaire, he basically uses the tarot cards against her. And on top of that, the minute she sees James Bond, he's like a wizard, or he's just like the most sexy mofo in the entire world, because she immediately falls in love with him. She immediately becomes attracted to him, and she loses her virginity, which is what Mr. Big didn't want, because if she loses her virginity, she loses her sightseeing ability. But it just makes me laugh when you ever see a Bond film, and it happens all the time. I think the Daniel Craig films actually kind of ground this situation, but Bond has this like magnetism where he's just able to just attract women. He beds them like right away, and it's just really goofy and really funny and just over the top. And that's just what this movie is. There are sequences where they're like a voodoo village and stuff like that, and they're sacrificing people with snakes. And it basically leads to them going back to New Orleans. And there's this crazy, weird sequence at an airport where Bond basically is trying to escape because he's going to be taken and basically thrown out of a plane. And he ends up in the plane with this woman who's being trying to learn how to fly. And it's just this really crazy sequence where they're driving around in the plane as people are chasing him, and he ends up like knocking off the wings and stuff like that. And then I swear to God, the woman uses shit in the movie. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is the first time we've ever heard a curse word in a Bond film. It's just really kind of out of place. But then it leads into like a whole big sequence where Bond is captured. He's basically taken by this character named Teehee, which is the greatest villain in the entire world up to this point. I love Teehee to death. Teehee is played by Julius Harris, and this guy is he's fun. He smiles all the time. He has that very 70s look for a African American guy, but he is just fun as hell. The way he has this like pincer magnet, or not pincer claw, that's all metal, because he lost his hand, kind of like Chubbs did in Happy Gilmore, by a crocodile. And he puts a Bond on a. This is where the crazy, cheesy, cheeky stuff happens with Bond. He puts him on this island with food around for the alligators and crocodiles. And Bond, I swear to God, has magical powers because he's able to run over alligators to get to the other side of the land. So he's basically running kind of like I don't know where exactly we talk about, but he runs on the alligators to get to the other side of the island. He sets the heroin lab on fire, and then there's this like crazy boat sequence which lasts, I think, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, somewhere around there, which is actually quite fun. It's not the most exciting thing, but it's just they're chasing after him. He's doing what he does. And then the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, at least in a Bond film up to this point, there's this character played by Clifton James who plays Sheriff Pepper. And Sheriff Pepper is a very racist, stereotypical Southern police officer of the 70s. Think like Dukes of Hazzard or Smokey and the Bandit. And he like has chewing tobacco in his mouth, and he is very Southern gentleman, but he's very over the top. He's a very stereotypical character. And he is doing everything in his power to chase after James Bond. He is doing everything in his power to stop James Bond and these people. He even has his brother, who is also a cop, but one of the henchmen steals the cop's boat, and they goes chasing after him, and they're like jumping over land. And the sequence just is like ridiculous, because at one point they end up in a shipping yard. Bond sets the boat on fire, it catches on fire, and then they get to the very end, and Felix Leiter is there, and then the Sheriff Pepper is there. Clifton James is a fantastic actor. He's done some really good work, but this is the problem with this movie. There's a lot of stuff that's just not very fun to watch. It's very like, why is this even this movie? why is Sheriff Pepper in this movie? He doesn't need to be in this movie because it's about James Bond stopping a heroin dealer, and you have this stereotypical cop who is chewing tobacco in his mouth, and he's chasing after Bond, and then he disappears from the movie. And apparently, he's in Man from the with the Golden Gun, so I guess it really doesn't matter. And I hope he's a lot better than that movie. It is what it is. So all that happens. They end up on Kanaga's base, his lair or whatever. They're gonna basically, I think they're back in Jamaica or whatever. They're gonna blow up the heroin fields, the poppy fields. Jane Seymour has been taken because Kanaga is basically mad because she's no longer a virgin, and she's gonna be sacrificed like what happened in the original movie or the beginning of the movie. And Bond comes in and rescues and saves the day. But there's this like really funny sequence where they're being fed to sharks. And Bond is able to escape because Q in the beginning of the movie gave him this watch. It has a magnet on it that's able to attract magnets. But he has this device that is able to shoot and blow up things, like inflate things and blow them up like he does to a love seat or whatever. As he escapes and as he fights Kanaga, he uses that device and puts it in Kanaga's mouth. And I swear to God, Big Trouble in China did this exact same thing too. They probably copied it. He basically inflates Kanaga. Kanaga inflates and he starts rising up like a balloon. And it's like the worst looking action doll I've ever seen in my entire life. And it explodes. And I'm like, this is camp at its finest. And I actually kind of enjoyed it. I laughed. I thought it was funny. I told my friend about it. He laughed because he really enjoys this movie. But it's a funny sequence because it's such in line with what is weird about this movie and how much it kind of just goes there and just doesn't feel right. And this is why this movie is just, I don't know why, if people like it, I don't know why, but it's just not a very good Bond film. But Roger Moore was really trying in this movie. He was trying to give a good impression as James Bond. I want to give him some like time and effort. I want to go, when I go through these movies, I hope he does improve, and I think he does. But yeah, just Kanaga's not a very good villain. Like I said, I love Teehee to death. There's a very cool sequence at the very end where he is basically on the train that Jane Seymour's Solitaire and James Bond are on. James Bond and Teehee have this one last fight, and he snips this Teehee's like claw or whatever, in which it gets attached to the bar handle. And he pushes Teehee out the window, and that's the end. That's the end of the movie, because when we see the voodoo guy at the end of the movie like laughing on the train. But this movie is just strange. It's very weird. It's, once again, like I said, Tom Mankiewicz. I don't know if he knows what he's doing, but it's like Diamonds Are Forever. It just feels like when they go to America, it starts to feel really off. I think when it's kind of set in the different countries, I think that's when it really works. I think it works well like that. But I don't know. I just feel like this movie just has a lot of weird stuff going on with it. I don't think America's captured very well, and I think the fact that they went with the blaxploitation route just really kind of hurt the movie, and that's a problem. And it doesn't take away from blaxploitation. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it really hurts the James Bond movie, because James Bond needs to go after like Blofeld or something like that, or the later on Jaws, or Christopher Lee's character, or Christopher Walken's character, or whoever else comes as a villain, because this is just a very weird movie. It's like Diamonds Are Forever. It's just a very strange movie. But it is saved somewhat slightly by that Wings, Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney song, because it's such a great song and it has a great tone to it, and it won an Oscar, so it's a fantastic song. It just doesn't need to be in this movie. It needs to be in some other movie. I wish they had given Wings something else, because it's just, I don't know. That's a Live and Let Die. It's a very strange movie. It does look good. It has very cool visual stuff, and it does get some weird places. Miss Moneypenny is in this movie, and Bernard Lee, Lois Maxwell. The very beginning, and they're cool in this, but they're starting to show their age. And you can start to tell that they're eventually coming to the conclusion of these two actors. So it's still nice to see him. He's still betting a woman at James Bond at the very beginning. There's kind of a cool, funny sequence there. So, but yeah, Live and Let Die, for at least for a first attempt. I think Roger Moore will hopefully do better. But I don't know. I've heard some really cheesy stuff that happens in this franchise with Roger Moore. So, but anyways, let me know in the comments below what you think of this movie. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you disagree with me? I'm sure a lot of people will. But yeah, hit that subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next. And comment below on any film that you watch on my channel. But otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for checking out Movie Emporium. I really appreciate it. If you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification button and the bell at the top. Find out what's coming next for Movie Emporium. Also, check out these 2 videos. They're amazing. I think they're awesome. I think you'll enjoy them too. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.